This next section, we're going to look at the typical work packages you might include in one of these funding applications. So traditionally, you might think, well, this is the way that we organize a product development. We do all the technical development and we get it to the point where it works really well. Then we engage with academic collaborators like the RSS or ourselves and design and deliver the academic study that proves that it's effective. Then we get regulatory approvals. Then we think about commercialization, and then we work out how we're going to work with patients and ensure this is an inclusive, widespread technology. However, in this and in other funding schemes, it's always more advisable to try and do these things in parallel to the extent that you can. So PPI should run through your application, but these other work packages, and somebody will be focusing on PPI after lunch, I think, but these other full work packages can run in parallel and can feed into each other throughout the development of your product. I'm just going to focus for a couple of slides on the first one, the technical development. And really, I think this is the bit that you will all be expert on already. And just a few thoughts from reading a lot of these applications is it's really important that you explain what you need to do to develop the product from the technical perspective in language a layperson can understand, because the committee really won't understand a lot of the technical details. Some pictures can be helpful. Many pictures which are very technical are not all that helpful because we don't understand what all the graphs mean. So trying to be selective about a picture, show us what it looks like, great. Give us a key graph from your proof of concept work, great. But really trying to explain in lay language how you're going to use the funding to evolve the technical aspects of your product. Be clear again what the step change will be by the end of this period of development. Make sure that you can deliver it in the time frame of the grant. And often that's a worry for reviewers. If you say, I'm going to spend half of this grant making the product better and then I'm going to test it, everyone thinks, well, you're not going to do it in time. Then the whole grant will run late, then you won't actually get around to the testing bit. So having some kind of clear evidence of why, if product development is the first step in this grant and then testing, how you're confident that the timelines will stick. Making sure that you demonstrate the science that's going to underpin this technical development and that your team has the correct expertise to achieve it. I think we had a question already. Should this be in-house development or should we be going outside to industry partners? And either is fine. It's sometimes reassuring to know that people with expertise in development are involved, because then they will have clear timelines that are sort of potentially a better idea that they're going to meet those timelines. It's also useful to see how, if you're going to have technical partnerships with other providers, how that might then work out further down the line, and if that's beneficial. For example, if you've got a product that needs another company's product to really hit the market, then working together and understanding how that relationship is going to work early is good. Costing this area of development appropriately, making it clear what you're using the costs for is good. I think someone already said if you've got 100% costing for one member of your team, it's probably not reassuring. But seeing if you're saying, well, we need a bit of an engineering time, we need a bit of senior leadership time, and this is why we've costed it like that, that makes it more reassuring.
Let me just introduce myself briefly. Jacqueline Burks. I'm a medical statistician. I have worked over the course of my career. I have worked in a very large number of clinical specialties. I'm also a current member of the NIHR Research Committee. I'll just speak very briefly. We haven't got much time. Often in the applications, you see applicants mention the TRL level. Not all of them do, but some do. And this is what they're referring to, the technology readiness level. And the applications we see coming through I4I, usually the lowest one would be 3, proof of concept. And they hope to demonstrate that they can move up 3 or 4 levels, perhaps, through the course of their research. And of course, if they start off 6 or 7, they hope to actually get it ready for use in perhaps the NHS. So we do see the TRL often mentioned. I'm just going to talk quickly about clinical studies. And they could be of various types. You could be evaluating a new diagnostic test that you've developed. You could be intending to carry out a method comparison study. You've developed a new method for measuring something that's perhaps cheaper, more efficient, easier to use, and you want to compare it with the gold standard method. Or it could be more advanced. It could be a clinical trial of an intervention, which could be at various levels. It could be a pilot study, feasibility, or your device or your technology is at an advanced stage, and you've done all that, and you're now ready for a randomized control slide. Some of these may be retrospective, using routine data, observational data, or for example, if you're at the proof of concept stage, or it might be the first in human, a very small scale study using a prototype that you've manufactured in small numbers, where you're actually interested in the safety. And I'll just mention again something that Gail mentioned, a point that Gail made, and that is if you have done previous studies, please report them in sufficient detail. And it's preferable that they have been published. I can tell you that I often look up references and check what's been done already for the applications that I see. And of course, the more advanced technologies will be prospective. When you're planning a clinical study, these are some of the questions that we would expect to see answers to. Where will the study take place? Is it multiple centres? Who will organise and manage the study? There's a profession of organising and managing studies. It doesn't just happen. How will you recruit the participants? Not just you think you know where they are, but how are you actually going to recruit them for your study? Can you recruit the required number of participants who meet the inclusion criteria in the available time? Often that is the extent of justifying your sample size. It's not a randomized controlled trial yet. It might be a pilot, but can you show us that the number of participants are available? And finally, the big question, do you need a clinical trials unit? Clinical trials units are really important for randomized controlled trials. SMEs don't usually have the expertise in-house to carry out clinical trials, and they do have to contract it to a clinical trials unit. And I think we've heard that mentioned previously by Ronan in his talk, how important it is. In fact, Ronan also mentioned that how important he found the contracting of a statistician. So what expertise do you need? Do you need a statistician? Do you need a trialist? And finally, you need a clinical trials unit to help you get that study off and ongoing and ensure its completion. It's important to know that your plans for clinical studies will be scrutinised in great detail by committee members and by reviewers. They may not be an expert in your particular clinical area, but they have extensive experience in carrying out these studies, and they expect to see the detail there so that they could imagine how they would carry it out. It must be presented, and any sample size must be backed up with statistics from cited studies. These are checked by members of the committee.
I'm Jane Wolstenholme. I'm a health economist for the RSS and the HRC. Within your application, it might be that you engage with a qualitative researcher, and it's important to be able to describe and, well, involve an expert in your qualitative research or behavioral science. So like involving the statistician or the CTU, if you're doing some acceptability study or a feasibility study, involve a qualitative researcher because they will know how to design the study properly. Types of qualitative work include examining the patient experience and clinical pathway, identifying aspects of patient and clinical impact. As I said, setting the study up so they can assess feasibility or acceptability in terms of the clinician or patient, and usability. So they will be designing the study to try and get responses from clinicians and patients about that. They're also involved in process evaluation. So, for example, in clinical trials, ensuring that the processes are also evaluated. There's an expectation that all health tech innovation development will be supported by a strong health economic case. So what do we mean by a health economic case? So health economics is the application of economic principles and methods to the production, distribution, and consumption of health and healthcare, with the aim of improving efficiency, equity, and value in health systems. So in a nutshell, it examines how scarce resources can be allocated in order to maximize health outcomes. Health economics can be used to evaluate your health tech intervention within the constraints of budgets and the constraints of the workforce and the constraints of sort of capacity within the system. And that means looking beyond does it work, i.e. the effectiveness, to questions like what changes, for whom, at what cost, with what benefits, and compared with what. So your intervention may bring about benefits and costs to a patient care pathway in terms of early detection, quicker turnaround time, improved sensitivity, less invasive testing, reduced side effects, and workforce efficiency, to give some examples. And the economic evaluation involves exploring these impacts on the usual patient care pathway and evaluating these impacts in terms of the costs and the outcomes. The methods used would be dependent on the stage of the health tech development, so that pipeline of health tech development, but all will require some form of economic evaluation. So economic evaluation is actually a gradual process when you're developing your health tech intervention. While NICE appraisal is the gold standard for market access and NHS adoption across England and Wales, it generally requires a cost utility or cost effectiveness analysis and a strong evidence base, usually alongside a randomized controlled trial or alongside a fully developed cost effectiveness model. Prior to this, you can actually focus on shorter term goals to generate an initial evidence base for your intervention. So you could start with small feasibility studies or pilot studies and early economic models to generate evidence on the key drivers of costs and outcomes along the patient pathway that your intervention will be impacting on. Preliminary health economic evaluation can highlight the critical gaps in current evidence and predict the likely drivers that will affect decision-making required for funding and uptake into the NHS. It's important to acknowledge the limitation in your evidence base and explore these uncertainties by conducting sensitivity analyses. Additional forms of economic evidence include the implementation burden. For example, what is the cost to the NHS of implementing your innovation, and exploring what impacts your innovation has on things like staff and equipment requirements. In a grant application, you need to ensure that you state clearly what methods you will use and how you will collect the data to inform your analysis. This might be data collection alongside a pilot or feasibility study or a trial. or it might be based on evidence from published literature and expert opinion that might go into an early sort of cost effectiveness model. You will also need to describe what analysis will be conducted. So suggestion is contact a health economist who can help you develop your economic evaluation evidence. You can contact most NIHR HRCs have a health economist involved, so you can contact the HRCs and see whether there is any health economist that can help you with this. They can provide advice in terms of the health economics component. And also RSSs often have health economists. So when you come to write a grant application, they might be able to support you with your actual writing. But there are other ways of getting in contact with health economists, contact specific. You can have a look online and see about health economics units and who has specialities in what area and whether they match with the innovation that you're developing. Think ahead to adoption and what evidence you will require for that final adoption. In terms of the economic of evidence, the NICE HealthTech program manual, which has superseded the, it came out in 2025, the end of 2025. So have a look at that, because that reports on the economic evidence required for health tech adoption. And the NICE Decision Support Unit report on early value assessment are actually useful guides for the economic evidence required.
So I'm Ashley Aitken, Senior Programme Manager with the Health Innovation Network, covering Oxford and Thames Valley, but we do work with other people, other companies around the country, and I'm going to walk through regulatory IP packages and commercialization. So just to start with the regulatory packages, quite often need to be giving a good idea of what specific approvals are required for your technology, and you do need to be showing knowledge of that pretty early on in the development pathway. So we're looking at things like UKCA and CE marking, anything you need from MHRA around device classification, and your digital technology assessment criteria for anything that is digital health and AI, and the path to achieving them and where you're going to get the evidence from to work towards those. You also need to be looking at things like data and information governance, showing a really good understanding of what information and governance will be needed for your projects and allow enough time within your timelines for it. Information, IG always takes longer than you think it's going to, always. So if you think it's going to take 6 months, add an extra 3 months on, you will need it. And you need to be very careful about what sort of patient data you are using, and you probably will have to justify why you want to use it. Also need to be looking at your intellectual property. This is a big one at the minute. Some new guidance has come around from the NHS and NIHR around this, which is definitely worth looking at. You need to be able to identify your current intellectual property and be able to say who owns it and whether you've actually got freedom to operate with that property, and also start talking about any future IP that you may be generating as part of these projects. Again, who will own it, who's got access to it, things like that. And then at the end of things, we need to start looking at a commercialization work package. So you need to be giving clear descriptions of your commercial route to market. So whether that's going to be a spin out, whether it's licensing, that sort of thing. Details of any commercial partner engagement, if any, going forward. And again, how that's going to work and where the financial benefits and things like that are going to lie around that. You also need to be looking at benefits realization, so how the product actually improves patient outcomes and or provides efficiencies to the NHS. Really be very clear about that. Especially around the benefits to the NHS. A lot of applicants focus purely on the patient benefits, and more often than not, the patients aren't the ones buying these products. So when you actually come to put your business case in, you haven't then got the evidence that you need to justify the NHS buying your product. And finally, we're looking at business case development, so showing the milestones for building strong health economic cases and business cases to encourage future adoption.